Welcome to MyLife, Chassidus Applied, episode 35, special pre-Rosh Hashana edition. This episode is dedicated to the happy birthday to Ariel and Rashi Bell. If you'd like to dedicate a future episode of MyLife, please send me an email, simon@meaningfullife.com, with the details, or you can submit it to the forum, the same forum where you can submit questions anonymously, and that is at meaningfullife.com/MyLifeLive. Obviously include your name and contact information, and you can take the great merit of dedicating these episodes that have been helpful to many, including to myself. So being that Rosh Hashana is just a few days from now, it seems most appropriate. Many questions have come in addressing the question of Rosh Hashana and how to experience it, to address this topic in this special episode. I want to begin, obviously, with a bracha for Ksiva v'Chsima v'Teva, L'shana Teva Masuka, to all of us, to each of you, to be a shana, a year of blessings, in Bona Chaim Mezeinu Revicha, healthy, nachas, Yiddish Chassidus Nachas from our children, our grandchildren, Parnasa Bar Chava, livelihood in abundance, and the blessings in all matters that we may need, things we may know we need, things we may not know that we need, including those that have to find a soulmate. May they find their soulmate this year, the least amount of aggravation. Those of us that already have a soulmate, may we recognize and appreciate it. Those that may need to renew, so to speak, our vows. Chol yom yeh beinecha chadosha. May that be this year. And it should be a year of Hatzlocha Tov Shinayin Hey, a year of Geula, the Geula the Rebbe gave his life for, that Rabbeim dedicate all their lives for, the Rebbe especially, Deir Shvi. And through your Futza Meinesecha Chutza, a year of your Futza Meinesecha Chutza, spraying the well springs to the point of Mola Orez Deis Hashem Kamayim Layam Mechasim, a world filled with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea. Let's begin with a few questions that were submitted regarding Rosh Hashana. I'll address hopefully some other topics as well, some related, some less related. Let's begin. How does a Chossid prepare for Rosh Hashana? Kurz and sharf, short and to the point. Question number 2. The davening at Rosh Hashana is really long and unfamiliar. Is it really practical to read all that while being dynamic and personally passionate? Is there a way to go beyond lip service? Question number 3. Hi, Rabbi Jacobson. I wanted to ask you about the proper way to approach Rosh Hashana. The seriousness of the day of war really intimidates me to the point that has turned me off. Are we really supposed to experience this glorious day not speaking and being very solemn? Is that the Chassidic way of doing Rosh Hashana? How can I infuse Rosh Hashana and the New Year with a chayis, as with vitality? Question number 4. We read and learn that Rosh Hashana is connected to Malchus. We say Melech. Many of the prayers add the word Melech, Malchus, crowning the king. We say the day of Tamlichuni Aleichem, Bameh B'Shefer, through Shefer. What is this concept of crowning a king? Does God need us to crown him? We don't relate to kings today. The kings we know today are either a joke or irrelevant. What is this concept of Malchus? How can we personalize it? How can we relate to it in a practical way? Question number 5. Though I grew up with Rosh Hashana, Yom Kippur, the Yom Nerayim, the days of awe, but to me they all are associated with either guilt, shame, trying to make a deal with God, how to have another year. It's all connected to a lot of superstition, a lot of indoctrination. Can Rosh Hashana be experienced in a far more mature and evolved fashion? This is a selection of some of the questions that came in that express, I would say, many other questions that are similar to this, but will suffice with these few because they address this cross-section. To begin with, let me amplify all these questions with a far more overarching question. Yes, Rosh Hashana, Yom Kippur, Yom Nedoim are special days where we have the experience and we know that Jews everywhere, those obviously born with it and born into it, but even those that, for whatever reason, don't feel affiliated, Rosh Hashana, Yom Kippur, there's some type of awakening, some type of inspiration. People want to go to synagogue, look for something. The question is, what do we gain when we go through Rosh Hashana Yom Kippur? Do we come out renewed, refreshed? The anticipation is there. The seeking is there. Everybody would love for something to happen. Does something actually happen? Last year Rosh Hashanah, do you feel after Rosh Hashanah like something changed? Let's take it further. The Alter Rebbe says, Nageres HaKedesh, Simin Yudalad, he says that every Rosh Hashanah, a new Er Chadash, a new energy, enters into existence. Unprecedented. An Er Chadash that never was here, never existed. The truth is, this comes from the Kisvei Arizal, who says it in somewhat different words, but the same idea, that before the sun, as the sun sets, the night of Rosh Hashanah, the entire world goes into a cosmic slumber. Durmita is the word in Aramaic. Durmita dezah, durmita of existence, a state of cosmic slumber, in anticipation, waiting for its contract to be renewed on Rosh Hashanah. And there's different discussion whether that happens Rosh Hashanah in the morning during davening, does it happen in the evening, does it happen by Shefer, etc. So where's this Eir Chadash? Where's this new energy? Do we feel it? Do we experience it? Is it purely based on faith? Can we harness it in any particular fashion? That's the biggest question of all. So yes, we can go with Amunah and faith and say something happens, but at the end of the day, if your children ask you, you ask yourself, are we actually renewed after Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur? How long does the inspiration last? So these are open and direct questions. Maybe some of us are afraid to ask them, but they should be asked because Yediyah Samach Lechetzi Refuah, the same thing, Shailas Chacham Chetzi Tshuva. Just like knowing a problem is have the cure, a question of a wise person is have the answer. By asking the question, it compels us to have to address it in a direct way. And what better time to do this as we are approaching Rosh Hashanah? And maybe we ask it the correct way. We challenge ourselves. We challenge those that we respect. We can then dig deeper and find an answer. So let's analyze this Er Chadash concept of Rosh Hashanah, because that seems to be a crux of a tremendous element. Rosh Hashanah is a new year. Shana Chadasha, literally. A new year, a new moon. Tiku b'chedesh shefer, b'kesel yem chagenu. Chedesh shefer is taich chedesh, not just the month, but chedesh from the word chidush. So what's this Er Chadash? Well, it goes to a concept which is a very beautiful idea, an eloquent idea, that time in Judaism, time, Zman, is not linear. It's not like a river of past, present, and future. Time in Judaism is a cycle, or even more accurate, a spiral. Like a spiral. Time is energy, and the cycle of energy, the spiral of energy, the axis of energy returns to its point, the original point, every year at that given moment. Some of you may be aware what it says in Likutei Torah. I'll basically ask a klotz kasha to explain this better. Why is it there are only 7 days in the week? Why don't we continue counting? 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, 49, etc. So the Alter Rebbe answers because something happens at the end of the 7th day. Time returns to its original cycle. To amplify the question, from a secular point of view, one of the reasons some people say, why there's 7 days? Because for convenience. We need at some point to make a break. So we make a break at the weekend. There was actually a Havamina consideration when they developed the metric system in Europe. Metric is all about tens. And the Europeans criticize Americans that they still stick to our system of inches that are not, everything is in tens. 10 millimeters, 10 meters, etc., etc. Tens, hundreds, thousands. It's an even number. They wanted to make the weekday also 10 days. But nobody can deal. Wait 10 days for a weekend was a little too long. Even 7 days, some people find too much. But that's a technical reason. The Alter Rebbe says in L'Kutei Torah, why 7? Because the cycle of time, as it says in Zohar, B'chol yem v'yem aved avidete, the pasuk says, Sheishis yomim osa Hashem es hashemayim v'sa'aretz. 6 days God created in heaven and earth. It says, as the Zohar, it should have said, B'sheishis. In 6 days. During 6 days. During the span of this time, the world was created. When you say Sheishis yomim, it implies that Sheishis, the 6 days, was created, as if the days themselves were created. It says the Zohar, En Achanami. Time itself is a creation. Every day is a unique energy, and there are 6 stages of this energy, with the 7th being Shabbos, Malchus. Sunday is Chesed, Monday is the energy of Gvura, Tuesday is the energy of Teferes, and it continues, and it comes the 7th day. In a sense, time doesn't come to a stop, but the cycle returns. So time is really circular, in a sense, spiral. And Sunday recreates. That's why the Shir Shel Yom, we say every Sunday the same one. So that takes a whole new take. That's a whole new take on time, and also a whole new take on holidays, and even on birthdays. Your birthday is not just commemorating an event that happened that day, 20, 30, 40, whatever amount of years ago. A holiday is not just remembering something that happened. The Jews left Mitzrayim over 3,000 years ago on Tezvov Nisan. Same with other holidays. But it's actually recreating Hayom Ha'el and Niskarim V'Nasim, as the Rebbe brings from the Ramaz, the name of the Arizal, that on this day Niskarim V'Nasim, that it actually recreates that energy that was there then is now entering again. The energy that happened when you came into this earth, when you left your mother's womb, is actually happening because time is not a line. Time is a cycle, a spiral. It's on a different plane, but it's essentially in the same space. The same space is maybe not the right word, the same point. So Rosh Hashana is an Er Chodesh, because just like when the world was created, there was a new energy. Every year, that's recreated. And that's why the world goes into a slumber. Because we're not just remembering a day, we're recreating a day. And in this case, it's the newness of existence itself. So Chassidus asks a question, 1 second. Rosh Hashana is not the first day of creation. It's the 6th day. B'chafei elul nivra ha'elam. There's also a pin b'chafei odar, but regardless, it's not Rosh Chodesh Tishrei. That's the 6th day. 6 days earlier was Bereshis bara Elokim es hashemayim v'sa'aretz v'hi eir, etc. So why Zeh Hayom Tchilas Masecha do we say that this today, Zeh Hayom, this is the day of the beginning of your handiwork, of your creation? The answer is because you count the beginning from the purpose of existence. The world is basically a stage, a platform, like a set table. When do you start counting? When the guest arrives at the table. Because he or she is the one, he and she are the one that fulfill the purpose. So when do you celebrate the building of a home? Not when the building goes up. You celebrate the first day that the people who are going to live in this building, who are going to transform it, who are going to fulfill its purpose and realize its intention, when they enter the stage. And that's on the 6th day. Zayim Tchilas Masecha. The day 1, day 2, day 3 are very powerful days. But they were all created for day 6. When the center of the universe will come, and Adam says to the whole world, he gathers the world and says, now let us recognize the creator of it all. That's the first Rosh Hashana. So Rosh Hashana is not just about technical when God started creating. That's the 25th of El. Rosh Hashana is recognizing when the world understands and appreciates its purpose. And that happens on the 6th day, which we recreate every year on Rosh Hashana. That's the Er Chodesh. Why am I elaborating on this? Because there's no way that you can appreciate a day and begin to harness this energy if you don't understand what you're dealing with. If someone has mazel, so Rosh Hashana comes on the calendar, they may just feel something. But if you acclimate yourself, you educate yourself, and you realize, tonight, the night of Rosh Hashana, the day of Rosh Hashana, something's happening. Then you begin to become more sensitized and sensitive to what's happening. And you begin to create containers to access it. So Rosh Hashana will come and go, and its new energy will enter existence. The question is whether we'll also be part of the process, whether we'll also be aware of it. So the first step is to be aware. And awareness comes with learning, comes with study. Study begins to cognitively at least prepare you for the concept. And then when a person gets close enough and is sensitive enough, they may even feel something. And far more than just guilt and conscience and responsibility and all the other sentiments that are very primal sentiments connected to this particular time. So that will bring me how a Chossid prepares for Rosh Hashana. Chossid prepares for Rosh Hashana, recognizes that Rosh Hashana is not the only day you're thinking about it, you think about God all the time. But Rosh Hashana is a time where we return to the point of our beginning. Think of it like your birthday. But in this case, it's the collective birthday of the human race. The human race, the birthday of the world, and the purpose and center of the world. So how do you prepare for a birthday? Think of it that way. You prepare by recognizing that you are recreated today, on Rosh Hashanah that is, and what is the purpose of your life? Very simple. Not to serve yourself and your selfish interests and self-interest, but rather, what is your role to serve? L'ovda l'shamra. So just read the first psukim in Bereshis, and you can understand what it means. You're put into a Garden of Eden, we're put into a world, and are you going to serve? What is the purpose? Your razan d'etrei, the purpose of your existence, your mission statement. This is what is being renewed on Rosh Hashanah. The challenge is to personalize it for ourselves, for our children, for people close to us. Simply think of it in simple, practical terms. Sadly, sometimes, especially if you grew up with it, it becomes so much of a habit. It becomes so much about just the language. Shoshana, Shefer, okay, I'm running here, I'm running there, apple and honey, here's what you do, you eat the head of a fish, you run to the mikveh, whatever Rosh Hashanah consists of. This becomes so much part of the running around, you lose sight of the whole ikar. So what a chassid does is pauses and says, let's review this from scratch. I'm not going to do what I did last year and 2 years ago. Let me sit down and rethink this. God is right now beginning to renew the contract with the entire human race. Bishvili nivra elam, lefichach nivra adam yechidi. Each of us was created as an individual. On Rosh Hashana, Adam is the collective human race at the time, Adam and Chava. And each of us is like the Adam and Chava of the world. And we have to see the world, the whole world created for us, not out of arrogance, responsibility. So what does the Gemara say? Why was Adam created last? Adam being here, Adam and Chava. If that's the purpose of creation, why did God wait 6 days? Should have created the human being first, and then bring the world. And the Gemara answers two seemingly contradictory answers. One is that when you set a table, you don't invite the guest until the table is set. You don't first say, okay, sit down to the table, and then you start putting a tablecloth down, and you start bringing food. The opposite. First you set the whole table. Then you welcome the special guest. God first set the table, created the entire world, with all daimim tzemeach chaim medaber, and all the delights and all the necessities. Then he brought the special guest and says, now you come and elevate this world. The concept of Avedis, Habirudim. The second answer the Gemara gives seems to contradict the first one. The first one is that the human being is a special guest, center of the universe. The second one says that if a person misbehaves, we're told, Afili yitush kodmach. Even an insect, even the lowly insect, a yitush, a little mosquito preceded you. So don't be so arrogant. Well, is that a special guest? Or are we even inferior to an insect? And the answer is obvious. It depends how you behave. If you take the world that was given to you and you use it for constructive purposes, to help others, to build the world, to become a more refined human being and elevate the world in the process, then you're the special guest. Everything serves you. Because l'sham sheni, v'ani nevresi l'sham esheskeni. And I elevate it all to serve God. But if you end up serving yourself, and you're not serving the higher purpose, then you are far more inferior than an animal or an insect, because that insect is serving God. So it all comes down to how we behave. In simple English, it simply means this. Every moment of our lives, every day, every moment, we always have these two choices. You encounter a person, you encounter an experience, you bump into anything, you see an apple tree. You have two choices. Actually, three choices. You can ignore it. You could say a juicy apple in a hot day and right away voraciously indulge and eat it. And then use the energy for your own whatever selfish purposes, greedy purposes, or even to be destructive. Or you can take the fruit gently off the tree and say, make a blessing on it. And then take the energy that you gain from it to help another human being. If you tear the apple off the tree, or the other experiences, and use it for selfish purposes, so the Chassidish Applied goes, that when a wicked person walks on the street, the cobblestones cry out, who are you to walk on me? I never transgressed, say the stones, and you're transgressing. Why are you walking on me? On the other hand, and therefore the apple will say, why did you rip me off of a tree just to serve you? I was very calmly living there, not bothering anyone. Now you've made me part of your criminal behavior. Your ability now to, whatever you're doing with that energy, to hurt others, you're forcing me to be a hostage in your being, so you should have left me on the tree. On the other hand, if you take the apple and you use its strength and you use the energy that you gain from it to help a person, the apple thanks you. Because had I remained on the tree, I would have been an apple. Not higher, not lower. But had you now I've become damu basar kibsari, I've become part of your flesh and blood, I am now a participant in the mitzvahs, the good deeds, the virtues, the kindness that you bring into this world. And that's the difference. We're a guest, then you elevate the world, and the world thanks us for elevating it. If God forbid the opposite, the world says, why did you come and defile me? I was not transgressing. Like he says in Tanya, Lemeshana tafkidam, animals, the nature, the entire cycle of earth does not ever transgress. They don't change their role, but it's a clock. It doesn't go up, but it doesn't improve the world, but it doesn't defile the world. And the human being has the power of both. This is Rosh Hashana. So maybe sometimes we have to take it back to the microcosm, to the individual. How do you see yourself? You're the crown jewel that was placed on this earth. You. Don't look at anyone else. You. And how are you going to use that energy? How are you going to use that blessing? God's blessing you with a new year. So let's say you have an appointment with God and God says, okay, I'm giving you a new year. What are you going to do this year? This is the way we should be thinking. Have a conversation with Hashem. Tell him, you give me a new year. Not a condition, not a deal. You give me a new year. Here's what I plan to do. It's like resources. Imagine God is the investor. He's the partner giving you the resources. Life. Sustenance. And our job is to stand behind the counter and do something with those resources. And we're accountable. Here's what we did last year, and here's what we're going to accomplish this year. So it's an attitude that really should permeate all year round. That's why it says Chassidus Rosh Hashana infuses Kabbalah Sale into the whole year. It's not just a Rosh Hashana experience. But Rosh Hashana is when the batteries are recharged, when the world is renewed, when we are renewed, when the contract is renewed. So giving thought to these things is the way a Chossid prepares for Rosh Hashana. Talk about the tefillahs being long and unfamiliar. Is it really practical? I mentioned in the last episode, obviously, to read all the prayers with the deepest kavanah is probably not so easy to do. If you're able to do it, great. That's why we have a chazan, shliach tzibur, who's supposed to be mechavan and say the things that we don't always have the right kavanahs. And then there's, of course, the Eibishter, that God fills in the right kavanahs. But there's no excuse. There's no excuse for us not choosing a few tefillahs, whatever they may be. And with proper kavanah, speaks to the Eibishter in this fashion. And say, thank you for giving me life. Thank you for renewing this year. Thank you for the honor to be your messenger, to transform this world. I recognize that I'm not here just to serve myself, to build a successful business, to make money, covet. Those are things that sometimes distract us and keep us busy. But right now, Rosh Hashana, I'm remembering the purpose of it all. I remember once a group of people coming to one of my classes, and there was they brought their sons, And their sons were 16, 17 years old. And I said, do you have any questions you'd like to ask? It's right before Rosh Hashana. He says, yeah, why do you Chassidim dress in this garb? Black and white, special garb. And, every time you answer different answers, my instinct told me to answer the following. I said, I think at the time maybe there was some type of space mission. I said, astronauts. Would you ask them the same question? An astronaut goes into space, and you see, they prepare all kinds of garb. They dress themselves in entire uniforms, and that's protective, and it's every detail counts. It takes a while to even dress someone as an astronaut. Why? I asked them. So they say, well, there's special conditions. You're going in outer space. It's dangerous. And if you don't have the right uniform, you don't have the right outfit, oxygen and other factors can impact on you. And you're going on a mission. And that mission has to be fulfilled. So I said, exactly right. We all are on our mission. There's a uniform that sometimes associates with the mission. Of course you can wear this uniform, that uniform. There's a reason for black and white. But the point is, we're not just randomly just choosing any garment. It's a sense of mission. Now, I know most of us will say, one second, I just dress this way simply because that's what my parents taught me to do. Correct. Because we all do things mechanically. And astronauts probably also start doing it without always understanding what they're doing. But there's a reason. It's a sense of purpose. It's knowing you're on a mission. And when you're on a mission, nothing is just who really cares what you put on. And I never forget the reaction. One of them, his name was Lad, he said to me, it's an excellent way of looking at life. He was 17, now he's in his 40s. And he reminded me recently, I met him at a wedding, he reminded me of what the answer, he never left the answer. He never left him, he remembers it. That's what Rosh Hashana is, a sense of urgency, a sense of mission. That's the thing to concentrate on. Is this the only way to explain Rosh Hashana? By no means. I'm sure you can find other explanations. I'm trying to take what Chassidus does, it makes it come alive. MyLife, Chassidus Applied, this is what I'm trying to do. And this will answer all the other questions. If you look at Rosh Hashana with old eyes, you're going to see an old Rosh Hashana. What's old eyes? The same magzah you read last year, the same boredom. You can't wait till it's over with. Maybe out of guilt, responsibility, I'll make a deal with God, as I mentioned. But you don't have that sense of vitality. You have to look at it, b'chol yem yir b'necha chadashim, as I discussed in the last week's episode. But here even more so. It's a chadash chadash. So let's say, for argument's sake, you come into a new place, and they tell you this is a place where there's new experiences. Everything is different here. You say, I don't see anything different. And they say, your attitude has to change. If your attitude is the same, and your mindset is the same, obviously you're going to experience the same thing again and again. If you close your eyes and say, you know what, maybe there's something new, and you go with a new attitude, there's usually a new experience. And here, this is what we're told in Rosh Hashana. So we have to go in with that type of mindset. And take the magzah and read it differently. Choose, as I said, a few prayers and focus on that. Now let's talk about the days of awe, intimidation, guilt, and so on. How a Chossid prepares. Let's deal with the story, the classical story with the Baal Shem Tov, where some of his Talmidim asked him, how do you prepare slichus? Slichus, we say the Shabbos, depending on the kfiyas, the Shabbos before Rosh Hashana, Motzei Shabbos. So he said, I'll tell you how. Travel to this and this town, stay in this and this inn, and watch the innkeeper, and you'll learn from him how one prepares for a Shana Chadash. Okay. They travel to Talmidim, they stay there for Shabbos. They say a nice couple, Yerushalayim, Erlich Eden, Noshim Pshutim. Okay, they don't see anything yet that really taught them anything. Shabbos passes, Tzoi Shabbos comes, midnight, 1 a.m., they go to say Slichas. Again, nothing extraordinary. They all go to sleep after Slichas, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., whatever it is. Suddenly they hear, like 4 or 5 a.m., they hear some rustling about in the outer room. They peek out through their door and they see the innkeeper is there dressed with his gartel, it's all set up, and they're wondering what's happening. They see, he goes up, he climbs up and brings down 2 big ledgers, 2 big books that he had up on the upper shelf. 2 ledgers. And they're wondering, what is this? He opens up, puts them down on a big table, opens up ledger number 1, and begins to read his al-chet, so to speak. He says, and you can imagine what already were his sins. One morning, and he has exact morning, he woke up a little late for the minyan. Another day, he wasn't so nice in his words to people who came and visited him. Another day, he could have been kinder to his wife and children. A list of his iniquities. Then he opens up ledger 2. And ledger 2 is the things he asked for last year from the Eibishter that were not fulfilled. He says, I asked you to let the cow live a little longer so we could have more milk. I asked you to make my wife healthy so she shouldn't have to struggle so much. I asked you for a little more parnasa so I can send my children to school and buy a little more for Shabbos. And then he closes his eyes and he looks up to heaven. Both ledgers are open. He says, Rabbeinu Shalom, I was far from perfect, but neither were you perfect. So I forgive you, please forgive me, and let's start a clean slate. Talmidei Rabbi Shem Tov from Glach Verstanden, and they understood the lesson. Now, you tell the story, some say, what is that? Some type of flippant attitude to Rosh Hashana, Yom Hadin, Yom Oyim V'Neira, we say in a Sana Tekef. Suddenly you suggest, No. We're not talking about not being accountable. We're not talking about not taking the day seriously. You have a relationship with the Eibishter. This isn't about some frightening, intimidating God with a long white beard in heaven sitting on a throne in a fairy tale image, waiting to strike us with lightning. You're talking about a relationship, a shutfus. You created us. We didn't create God. God put us here on earth. And He put us here with a Yetzer Hara. And He put us here with challenges. And Chassidus talks about Neir Alil al Bnei Adam, which is another topic altogether, but set us up in many ways. But He wants something from us. So we are accountable for our actions. But God is also accountable. This is not sacrilegious, and it's not trying to be irreverent. It's trying to have a human type of relationship. Obviously, God is not human, but trying to make it relate to us. And what Chassidus teaches, this is unique to Chassidus, is that our attitude with God has to be out of love, not out of fear. There are times where you need to have yira, obviously, Yom Neroyim. But we also know Chassidus says, V'gilu barada, that you're also dancing. But you stand before a king, you don't make somersaults, you don't dance. You stand before the king, you stand in awe and respect. But inside, you're celebrating. And on Simchas Sukkos and Simchas Torah, the Gila comes out, B'golei. B'kesel Yom Chagenu, it's concealed in Rosh Hashana and Yom Kippur. And on Sukkos and Simchas Torah, Shmini Atzeres, Simchas Torah, when you come out of the palace of the king, you start dancing. But it's always with Simcha, because it's a relationship that has a positive purpose. We're not put here in the earth to be punished. We're put in this earth to transform the world, and that's a great Simcha. Another similar story. Baal Shem Tov once walks into a shul, Rosh Hashana, or Yom Kippur, and he hears the Chazan, he's singing a Simcha Dikanigan. So he thinks to himself, well, maybe he's singing Marikayan, he's singing some sections, a very celebrated section. In Yom Kippur we have sections like that too. He listens closely, no, he's singing Al-Chet. Al-Chet is one of the more somber, one could say, and the more depressing prayers. We start spelling out every particular type of sin, detail. What's the Simcha? So initially, the Rebbe Shem Tov considered maybe he's an Amoritz, he doesn't know what he's reading. So where's Al-Chet? Everything is a Simcha. But then he saw it was a Chazan that did know what he's reading. So the story goes that after davening, maybe after Yom Kippur, the Baal Shem Tov approaches the Chazan and says, tell me, it was a beautiful tefillah, but tell me, what was the Simcha when you sang Al-Chet? And he answered, very simple. Everybody has a tafkid, has a job in the king's palace. Some people bring and deliver the mail. Some people go out and work the fields. Some bring messages to the towns, to the people, to the nation, to the subjects of the king. Some go to war. Everybody has their role. My role is I'm the janitor. I clean the palace. And I sweep. What gewaldige honor and schus for me to be the one that makes sure the palace is exquisitely clean. This was his understanding of Alchet. This is a Chassidic understanding of Rosh Hashana and Yom Kippur. This doesn't mean you do it with less passion. On the contrary, you tell me, where do you do something with greater passion? When you feel that's loving and it's joyful, or when you feel it's if someone's pulling teeth? It's Alchet, yeah. But why are you saying Alchet? You're saying Alchet because you want to be cleaner. You want to be pure. You want to be more refined. In order, the palace should be clean. It's very different. You're cleaning your own house. You want your house to be spotless. That's a bracha. That's a schuz. That's a simcha. Obviously, it's a different simcha than when you bring a new piece of furniture. This is essentially the difference between Shuva Tata and Shuva Ilah. Shuva Tata is cleaning out the dust. But why? Not an end in itself. So you should have a clean home so you can bring in new furniture. Shuva Ilah is V'ruach Toshuv El Elokim Asher Nesana, connecting to God. Shuva Tata is necessary because you just can't connect and say Sheretz, that a table V'Sheretz Biyodei is not appropriate. You can't say, oh, you know what, I want to connect. Clean your clothing first. Clean yourself up. But the cleaning is done with simcha. You take a shower. You scrub off the grime. That should be with the same joy as all Aved. That's why even this Hashem b'simcha, all Aved. Even Shuvat Hatah has to be b'simcha. However, it's a simcha, as I said, v'gila berada, or other forms where it's obviously commensurate to what you're going through. This is the Chassidic way of looking at the days of awe. They're days of awe. Yomim Noraim. Like it says in Chassidus, the first half of the Chodesh Tishrei is Smeile Tachas L'Reishi, Smeil, Gvura, and the second half is Yemini Techapkeni, Yemin Chesed. But both are part of the picture. Let me finally discuss the issue of Malchus, kingship. Yes, it's true we don't have a mashal of a king. It says when the Tsar was overthrown in Russia, some Chassidim cried, and they felt we lost now a mashal in Chassidus. Because the Tsar was an example, his absolute power, even if it was an Umazeh, was an example. So every melech, even a melech that's a Rasha, also has power from a higher place. But the idea, Malchusa da'ara kein Malchusa da'rakia, that we had a mashal for a Malchusa of the Eibishter, a type of sovereignty, type of full authority. And once the Tsar was overthrown, we lost our mashal in Chassidus. So it's true we don't really identify with a king. The kings and queens of our time, as the questioner asked, is a joke. But let's define, what is take a king? Why is a king? What is the idea of kingship? So in Chassidus, we talk about Malchus, Binyan HaMalchus. Rosh Hashana, we begin Binyan HaMalchus, and through the 9-10 days of Asayas Yemei Tshuva, we build Malchus from Rosh Hashana to Yom Kippur. We build the 10 spheres of Malchus, from either Chochmah going downward to Malchus, or from Malchus going up to Chochmah and Keser. There are actually two opinions, whether Asayas Yemei Tshuva is Mamat L'mayla, from Malchus, Yesod, and Hoyd, Netzach, and so on, or is it Mamayla Lamata from Ch? In my book, 60 Days, I bring the different opinions on the matter. Some Chassidic has certain questions, Hagos on it, and so on. The Arizal and the Ramak, these are the two opinions. It's not relevant right now. But what's Binyan HaMalchus in simple, palatable English? Chassidus Applied. Malchus can be translated in many ways. We translate Malchus kingship, sovereignty, majesty. I personally choose the word dignity. Malchus in Chassidus talks many things. Malchus is Dibur. Malchus, the Atzilus becomes Keser of Biyah. There's a lot of roles that Malchus plays. And obviously they're all correct. But I found in the Maimorim of the Alter Rebbe, when I was preparing years ago the book on Sfiras Eimer, and I was looking to define all the Sfiras, Malchus is one of the more difficult ones. Chesed is love, Gevura, discipline. But Malchus, what's Malchus in the Midas? Remember, there's seven Midas, starting from Chesed, going through Malchus. What's Malchus in Midas? So Alter Rebbe says it's Reimamus, the sense of Reimamus, which essentially the sense of dignity. Think of it this way: what would a person be like without dignity? You could be smart, you could have Chochmah Bina Das, you could have Chesed Gvura Teferes, be loving and kind and compassionate, and you can be disciplined, and you have Netzach, fortitude and determination, and you have Hoyd, humility, Yesod, bonding. If you don't have dignity, self-worth, self-value, you have 9 great faculties, but you don't value yourself. In simple English, dignity is what a mother gives her child when a new child is born, and the mother stares into the child's eyes and say, "You are valuable, you are precious, you're indispensable." This is dignity. When someone's dignity is defiled, when someone's dignity is violated, we know it very well. An insult, a dismissal, abandonment, many forms of it. Your dignity is compromised. So Malchus is dignity. Why Rosh Hashana? Because that's when we were created. Human being was created in the divine image that gives us that indispensability that only the divine can give us. And therefore it's a day of Malchus. Our Malchus and the Eibishter's Malchus. Remember, the Eibishter is higher than Malchus. He's higher than all the Esther spheres. What is the role of the Eibishter as Malchus? Is to give us a taste of what means dignified. A Melech is a dignified presence, a majestic presence. We're created in the divine image, so we have a taste of it. On Rosh Hashanah, we renew that contract. We're Mamlech HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We designate God as the most dignified, as the eminent king of the universe. The word king, again, is difficult to use because we don't relate to the word king. But think of it that way. Think of it as an entity that is dignified. And by us having bittul to God, we in turn receive from that Malchus, which explains the whole idea of Binyan HaMalchus. Yes, it's true, we crown God, but what's Binyan HaMalchus? What are we building exactly? We're building God's kingship in Seder Ishtalshlus. Because Malchus, as we know, he explains the mitzvahs, Minei Melech and Derech Tzitzecha, that Malchus requires Chochmah, wisdom, it requires Midas, but it's all about the ability to be a sovereign force. The word ruler can be seen, as many of us take it in a very negative way, who needs someone to rule, but ruler could also be someone that's responsible. Each of us has a melech and a malka in our Dalet Amis. Yisrael, it says, Eden are melochim or bnei melochim. We are kings. Atem tiyeli mamlechas keinim v'gei kodesh. What does it mean? You have dignity. Look at people who don't have dignity, or people who are behaving or living in lives that are subhuman. There's something that's very disturbing about it. On the other hand, when you have a sense of responsibility, you were sent into this world, like I mentioned before. The table is set. You were sent into this world to bring elokus, to bring godliness into the world, to elevate it. Not Malchus as some arrogance. That's why Malchus is so much associated with bittul, les la megarma klum. It has nothing of its own, like the moon. But as a result, it has everything. Because it's bottled to melech ha'elyon. Malchus of Atzilus is rooted in Keser. Keser iyo Malchus. So what you have is the ultimate foundation of what each of us needs to fulfill our purpose in this life. One of the greatest challenges today is people think they're dispensable. 7 billion people on this planet, who really cares what you do? Another drop. We're told, no, Rosh Hashana says, Lefichach nivra adam yechid. You were created today as if no one else exists. You're responsible, and you're blessed with all the resources to change your world. You're a melech in your environment, in your home. Not a melech looking for kavod melachim, hey, honor me, bow to me. A melech is a responsible but a dignified entity. You're not an inferior. Like that line they say, you were born original, don't become a copy. We end up becoming, copying, pleasing, helping define ourselves by what other people expect of us. Rosh Hashana says, regain your identity. Just like when you were born, a unique individual, regain that in Rosh Hashana. You don't have to be a conformist. You don't have to satisfy other people. You're not here to serve them. You're here to serve a higher purpose, God. And when a person connects to the Eibishter, he gets all the malchus he needs, the dignity he needs. If we have healthy parents, they'll reinforce it. They'll validate us. They'll affirm and confirm this sense of value. That's the essence of Rosh Hashanah. The value of a human being, which is predicated on the value of God. Because if God is valuable, and God does not create junk. If you love God, you love what God loves. Every human being. The Declaration of Independence, all men are created equal. We would have written all people are created equal. But there they mean men, I assume they mean men and women, and each one has inalienable rights endowed by the Creator. So when you give the Creator his due and you crown him as king, then each of us by extension becomes valuable. Eliminate, God forbid, the Creator, then maybe we're not all equal. Maybe some people are inferior to others. The way most of history testified that the monarch or the head of the church or whoever was closer to God and his subjects were slaves. Says the Torah, no, every person was created in the divine image. And by that birthright, which is the right of every human being, by the virtue of our being, of our existing, is because God says, I want you here on this earth. You matter, you're indispensable. This is Rosh Hashana. I've shared this many times with people, and they were blown away by the fact that the Rosh Hashana is coming to teach us such a message. You hear it in therapy, hopefully. In other places, yes, that's Rosh Hashana. Every year that's renewed. It's the value of God, and therefore the value of every aspect of existence, and the value of every human being. This is one way to explain Malchus. Again, by no means is it limited, but it's one way to relate to it. So I've elaborated now much of this episode on Rosh Hashana, and I want to share a few other questions which are related somewhat, and also connected to this idea of dignity. Someone asked the question, jealousy. I know that everything a person has or doesn't have is determined by God for a specific purpose. And I also realize that we don't really know what is going on in each person's life or the challenges they face. Still, this doesn't seem to be enough for me to get beyond these feelings. I realize that I need to focus on my own happiness so that I will be bothered less by what others have. But I can't help feeling green with envy. What can I do to finally banish these feelings? A similar question about jealousy. I suffer from strong feelings of jealousy, even my own family's brachas. It is toxic and often makes me spiteful and filled with other negative emotions. How can I learn to celebrate other people's happiness rather than being envious of it? Okay. Why am I suddenly bringing this into it? Well, it's a question that was one of the questions submitted over time. So firstly, I refer you back to episodes 7 and 8, where I discussed from Tanya, the end of chapter 12, how one deals with feelings of tina, kina, a grudge, anger, jealousy, envy, and so on. It talks about moyach shal ta'alev. I'll refer to that, but there I elaborated more. Here I want to talk about another aspect of it. It's not just jealousy. Most of the vices, and maybe all the vices that plague the human race, whether it's envy, whether it's anger, whether it's greed, particularly ben adam lechavere, you always think, where's the root of it? Take two newborn children. They're both just born. They were given life. They're both healthy children. Why should one be envious of the other? Each was given blessings. Where do we develop these vices, these negative and very disturbing feelings toward each other? Especially envy, but also the other vices. Where does it come from? Is it from birth? As I said, two newborns. Okay, you could say two newborns, they don't communicate, they don't yet appreciate, they don't know. But even a younger age, you see adults have far more obsessive emotions that are negative towards each other than children have. So you have to say it's part of what society programs us to be. And I would say, with the risk of sounding oversimplistic, that it's rooted in a thing called insecurity. Something most of us would not like to acknowledge. How many people like to say, go around with a sign, hey, I'm insecure? Some of the most insecure people mask it so well by behaving in such so-called secure fashion, arrogance, that they know everything. It's frankly sometimes just an insecure person hiding behind smoke screens. Many of these vices are lacking self-esteem. Someone once came to the Chossid Rebbe, and he complained about another guy opening up a business that he claimed was asagas gvul. Competition, unfair competition that's going to take away business from him. The Chossid asked him, what do you want me to do? I want you to close him down. The Chossid said to this fellow, you ever see when the horse comes to water, to drink water from a river, before it begins drinking, it starts stamping its feet and its hooves and gets all like excited and agitated. Why? It was a rhetorical question, and the Chossid continued. Why? Because when the horse is about to drink water, he looks down into the water and sees another horse, a reflection of himself. And he thinks another horse is coming to steal his water. So he starts stamping and hoofing and all the grunting, everything a horse does, snorting, to chase away the other horse, until he realizes that there's enough water for both of them. May not even realize that it's not another horse, it's only his own reflection, whatever. There's enough water for both of them. So obviously the Chossid did not go ahead. Now, of course, there are halachas of asagas gul, don't get me wrong. But the Chossid sensed in this situation, the problem is this guy, lack of confidence. You see, confident people are the easiest people to get along with. Coexistence. Chassidus calls it das. You can have chachma bina and be a 2-year-old. Das is das of a gadol. You call a bar das is a gadol. You could have a genius that's 3 years old, 5 years old, and has a lot of chachma bina, but das. Chet etza das. Das is his kashrus, as he says in Tanya. Das is bonding, connecting, an intimate sense of knowledge. What does it mean? Das is meichin de gadlus. So Chassidus talks about mola ores deya es Hashem. Not bina, not chachma, even though other places that's chachma bina. Why? Because lo yirei v'lo yashchisu. What's the connection? The pasuk says there will be no more evil, no more destruction. Why? Because the world will be filled with divine knowledge. Since when does knowledge counter destruction? There's been wars fought by people that had knowledge. World War II is a good example. Not just knowledge, science, advanced knowledge. The answer is because it's not deya. Deya is more than just knowledge. Deya is the ability to tolerate, besevel many different opinions. Talks about the mabel, the tevis neach was reigned there, the power of deya, das. That's why the animals were like gorzev and keves, that the lamb lived with the zev and keves is the lamb and the fox or the wolf, and the lion, as the psukim spell out there in the psukim in the Haftarah we say in Achosh HaPesach from the psukim of Yeshaya. Why? Because when das reigns, even different personalities can get along with each other. The Chossid Lavi, that's what will be the case. We won't become clones, all the same personality, different personalities. But when you're secure with who you are, why do you have to be wrong for me to be right? You'll see so many people have this schadenfreude. We call it in Yiddish, we call it nishfarginen. Why do you care someone else succeeds? And for some reason you have this, I wish he doesn't succeed. Not because you gain. It's one thing if that person, you gain, so you say, okay, my gain, his loss is my gain. But let's say you gain nothing. There's some people simply celebrate, Rahman al-Islam, have pleasure when someone else falls. Where does that come from? That's pure insecurity. Insecurity because you're not comfortable with yourself. So when everyone else is losing, you don't look like such a big loser. This is why I'm mentioning it, because Rosh Hashana, I'm trying to apply it to personal life. The idea of dignity, when you value yourself, when you know you're valued and you are truly important, then obviously you'll be able to get along with everyone because no one's taking away your turf. You don't have to fight for your turf because you're secure. God gave you what He needs to give you. You find in many letters of the Rebbe when he speaks about panos and other things, when people say, I'm jealous of that one. God gives you you'll get what you deserve to get. Doesn't matter what someone else gets. So it's not like there's only $1 million, either he gets it or you get it. You will get what you need to get. Now that needs betachin and needs security. You need to feel secure that you're blessed with everything you need to have. Now obviously human beings make mistakes, but that's not what we're talking about now. So Rosh Hashana can spill over by understanding. If you feel that sense of malchus, that sense of melech, and that malchus transmitting it to you from the Eibishter's malchus, God chose you. Rabbi Avadia Hager was a ger that lived in the time of the Rambam. And he was a great scholar and a great man, but he always had feelings of somewhat inferiority. Why? Because he was a ger. So he wrote to the Rambam a letter basically bemoaning the fact that he'll never have the yichus that Bnei Avram, Yitzchak, V'Yankov have because he's a ger. The Rambam writes back to him an answer and says to him, Yidden that are born Bnei Avram, Yitzchak, V'Yankov, their yichus goes through Avram, Yitzchak, V'Yankov to Hashem. And you have a direct yichus to Misha Amar V'Hoya Elam. Because you don't have the yichus through human beings, you're directly to God. I always thought about this answer. The Rambam was not trying to be patronizing, because there's a truth to it. Obviously, we'd all love to have the nurturing parents that confirm and affirm and validate our connection with God. But he's basically saying that real dignity comes not from human beings, even from the greatest human beings. The Eibishter is the only one that gives us true dignity, because he's the only, as Lashon Chassidus, he's the only mechuyev hametzias. How could a human being, a parent, who himself or herself is not necessary, give us a sense of indispensability? But when it comes to matzmus, Uhumuhus, Shemitziusi Matzmusei, She'en le'ila ve'elei siba, Chaz v'shalom, like he says in the Geras HaKedesh epistle, Simen Chof. When it comes from him, then we also have an element of Mitziusi Matzmusei, that you're not dependent on anyone. Not in an arrogant way, that I'm self-made, but a sense that the Alter Rebbe's big chiddush in the Geras HaKedesh Simen Chof, written right before Chof Dalet Tevis, Tov Kuf Ayin Gimel. Kamayom Lifnei Stalkusi, as the Tzemach Tzedek writes. See, the Chiddush, unbelievable Chiddush. In the Kutei Deburim it says that when the Chassidim heard that, they would get kaikled. It was like a major revelation. Then they understood it from one line. We need the explanations that the Maimarim give us. Because the Alter Rebbe is saying that sense of self, that you don't feel you're an extension of your parent. You don't feel you're an extension of anything. Where does it come from? So you could say, what do you mean? That's just plain yeshus. Aniv Avsei doesn't come from any Kedusha. It comes from Helen V'Hester, from Tzimtzum. The Alter Rebbe says no. The Tzimtzum causes you to be a yesh, an arrogant sense of self. But the mere fact that you feel that you've created yourself, that you're not as an extension of something else, comes from the Atzmus, who's not an extension of anything else. That gives us that type of absolute indispensability. But only when you recognize it comes from the Eibishter. This is Rosh Hashana in a nutshell. Rosh Hashana is that transmission of connecting to Mitziusim Atzmusei, to the Melech Amiti, the only one, Ein Lov El Hashem Elokov, we say about a Melech. But the Eibishter, obviously you don't say Ein Lov El Hashem Elokov, because it is Hashem Elokov. Nothing higher, because there's no cause. Ein Lo Ila V'Siba. And we are the zchus to have a little taste of it in our lives, in our indispensability, when we recognize our shlichus and our purpose in existence. No one can give us that. So a take on the Rambam's explanation to Avadya Hager. I use this very often when speaking to people who, God forbid, grew up in homes, very abusive or dysfunctional homes, and try to explain, when you have a parent that did not validate you, on the contrary, abused you, abused your dignity, made you feel worthless, made you feel self-loathing, even worse, suicidal. The Avadya Hager letter is a tremendous lesson, because yes, it would be healthier to have the parents, but if you don't, it doesn't mean all is lost. You have to create bypass surgery to connect to the source itself, because the source that gives us real value, the real nurturing and love and unconditional, absolute purpose of life and indispensability, comes from the divine itself. And that sometimes is revealed when a person, Rahman al-Islam, does not have it coming in more human terms. They can connect to that. That's the work that they have to do. Just trying to apply Rosh Hashana even to circumstances that are very therapeutic and so on. And again, this is not turning Teirah Chaz Shalom into therapy, as we discussed in the earlier sessions. Like the Rebbe says in the end of Kuntas Inyan Shateres Chassidus, where he talks about that he barasi Yetzirah barasi le Teirah Tavlin. So the Rebbe asked, what Teirah is, a spice, is a medication? That's all it's created. David HaMelech was punished for calling Teirah even Zmiris, songs. To suddenly say that Teirah is simply here to so-called counter the Yetzirah, to be a healer for the Yetzirah, an elixir or whatever you want to call it, a healing agent. The Rebbe said, no, Chaz v'Sholem. Teirah is Shashui HaMelech, Batzmusei. However, where do you see the Etzem HaTeirah expressed when Teirah is able to heal a person on this earth in a very practical level. So it reveals the atzmius of Torah. The same thing here. Rosh Hashana obviously is Achtaras HaMelech. We're going into the highest levels. But when you can take those highest levels and infuse a person with a sense of value, that their year and their life is now changed because God has now created you anew on Rosh Hashana, and says, I'm giving you a job, an indispensable job. Only you and only you can do that job. The Rebbe very fondly would often say by Fabrengens, that every individual has a mission and a role that no one that ever lived and no one that ever will live can accomplish but you. Not Moshe Rabbeinu, not all the Gedalim. Because if God could accomplish it without you, why did He create you? If they could do it, why do they need you? So we each have a role to play that no one can accomplish but you. So Rosh Hashanah gives us that message. And when a person can apply that in a personal way, that reveals the atzmius of Torah, the atzmius of Rosh Hashanah itself. And in many ways, that's what Kabbalah Sale is about. Say, Kabbalah Sale? What do you mean? Kabbalah Sale is not about me. Ein Chanami. Kabbalah Sale is saying there's only one God. You're not God. No one else is God. There's one God. But when you are bottled to that God, what happens? You become an extension of God's purpose. Because He wants you to be the one that channels Him, meaning God, into this world. So then you become a part of godliness in this earth. So it's precisely through bittul that you become the biggest mitzias. Not mitzias as in yeshus, as in self-aggrandizement, but in mitzias as in value, as an absolute value, indispensable value. That's Rosh Hashanah. So it's the tachas ha-mitzias and tachas ha-bittul. Look at the sichos of Tov Shin Nun, Rosh Hashanah time, the letter of Tov Shin Nun, as well I believe of Tov Shin Nun Aleph somewhat. The Rebbe talks about that element, that Rosh Hashanah is tachas ha-mitzias and tachas ha-bittul. That's why in Rosh Hashanah we don't just sit and talk about God, we ask Bakashas Tzrachim. Hagos Maiminis the Rebbe brings is Rosh Hashanah, the Ikar Adin and Dvarim Gashmim. Tfilas Chana, what does she ask for? A child. Not just let me connect to God. The Sichas Yidua about that in Tov Shalom Hey, the Rebbe powerful Sicha and Tfilas Chana. The Eli when he thought that she was drunk, etc., etc. Lifnei Hashem Yishpach Sichi. I'm pouring out my soul. And the idea is that Rosh Hashanah is a combination of both Mitzias and Bittul is not a contradiction by God. Obviously, the Bittul brings to the Mitzias. And when a Id Taka davens for his Gashmis, the things, he's not asking for his Gashmis, like the Rebbe brings there, Revim Gam Tzmeim, from the Baal Shem Tov. He's asking because the Neshama is hungry for those things. So this has been the special edition we did for Rosh Hashanah. I chose to stay away from things that were not directly connected. There's obviously a lot more to say, but hopefully this can help each of us prepare for these special days coming up. This year the Kfiyas is 3 days. It's also Ashna Shashmita that the Rebbe would always talk about, which is something we'll discuss in future episodes, the lessons, the personal messages, and how Chassidus Applied Chassidus can help us understand that as well. But I want to conclude where I began. First of all, wishing everyone a ksiv chsimet teva l'shana teva mesuka begashmis kipshute of health, and no daigus, no tzaddis, and no agmas nefesh. It should be a year of simchas only, the year of above all, the year of the geula itself. And everyone, and whatever needs you have, whatever needs you need, the Eibusher should bless b'yodei am'yodei hamlei apsucha hagdesha v'archava. Like the Rebbe says, hagdesh, and the siddur of the Baal Shem Tov is hagdusha with a gimel. If anyone is interested in dedicating these episodes, please be in touch with us, either at meaningfullife.com/MyLife or personally to me, Simon at meaningfullife.com. This episode was dedicated again, happy birthday to Ariel and to Rashi. And again, the next few days, Rosh Hashanah, may all our tefillahs go straight up, and we should pierce the heavens. Tkiyah Shefer should help in the process, and should be a very blessed Shana Teva. So next week I'll see you, as well be the new year, Tov Shin Hey. It will be a special episode connected to Yom Kippur, and continue to please send us your questions. They're all valuable, they're all indispensable. Every question of a person is invaluable and precious and priceless. And it's been an honor to be able to, being that this is the last week of the year, I want to say it's been an honor to be able to share, and you dedicating some time to listen to my few words. Hopefully I've been a channel and trying to be a channel of words that are not my own, but that I've heard, that I've read, and essentially just trying to channel them and express them in ways that we can understand in palatable ways. So it's been a real exhilarating journey for myself because of having to dig deeper and find tremendous, fascinating lessons in Chassidus and the Rebbe's Sichos, answers and so on. And I want to thank all of you who've been helping me in the sense of sending your questions in and also your answers, people's different suggestions, people's comments, including sending letters and pointing out different sichos and maimorim that address these topics. So I hope this next year will be an even richer year. We're preparing for the Gula when we'll be learning Teirasa Shel Mashiach, Chassidus Applied. May it be a year that will even more and grow in every possible direction. And please don't hesitate to share any thoughts, ideas, rebuttals, suggestions, critique. It's all welcome. It's all for the good purpose. And until next Sunday, 8 to 9, Shana Teva Masuka, Ksiva V'Chsima Teva.